Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
I saw my mom. I looked outside when they were taking me to the ambulance, and I saw my mom crying. And I don't know, you don't really see my mom cry a lot. She's a real tough woman. So that kind of cracked me, like, to my core. And I spent a week in a box styrofoam room just kind of thinking about that. And I had nothing else. I didn't have my phone, and just four walls drove me insane. But I sat with the fact that the woman who had given me so much and had given me everything, I had driven her to tears. And, I know I didn't make her cry, but my actions had made her hurt so bad that it brought tears to her eyes. And I think that really, truly kind of broke me. But after that was the beautiful thing. She picked me up from the hospital and she said, you have one life and you have one choice, and you're the only person that is going to be able to turn this around and kind of get this on track. And she's like, I can't do it for you. You're the only one. And so I knew I had to take it a day at a time. So I got this tattoo on my wrist. It says 86400. Yes. It's the amount of seconds that you have in a day. And so that's what got me through it, is after her kind of telling me that it was a long journey ahead, getting clean, it would be one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know, it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA.
Hi there, this is Jake Eberly, the producer of the Bonus Babies Podcast, and this week Jayne Amelia speaks with Ryan Moses. A former foster youth himself, he had 12 placements in 8 different school districts in only 4 years. And then he advocated for himself by calling the CASA offices of Monterey, found his own CASA, and it changed his life. Here's Ryan Moses.
Hey, I'm here with Ryan Moses. Ryan, you just had a big thing happen in your life. What happened?
Yeah, so I thought it was food poisoning, but food poisoning doesn't last for 4 days. So went to the hospital and the doctor told me I had appendicitis. And at that point, I was happy to hear it.
Right, so you went to the emergency room?
Went to the emergency room, didn't burst, but it did need to come out. So I went and I was on the surgery table 12 hours later after showing up at the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in order to take yourself to the emergency room, you had to be either in excruciating pain or you're throwing up so much or that kind of decision is hard to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and especially, you don't want to admit it. You're like, I don't need to go to the hospital. I don't need to go to the hospital. But
I know. It's like,
my girlfriend actually, it was the 4th day of me, not being able to hold down fluids or not being able to hold down water. And my partner looked at me at 2 a.m. after I got up to do my business in the bathroom. She's like, you need to go to the hospital. So it was 2 o'clock in the morning. And we went to the hospital.
Great time to go, right?
No one was there. I actually ended up going to the Veterans Memorial Hospital. I'm not a veteran, but they took me, and they, probably one of the best medical teams I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, LA Veterans Memorial. They were my surgery team, and they did the intake, and they were just great.
Right. So what was the post-op like?
Ice cream and laying in bed and watching Netflix. I tried to stay off my phone. I mean, business calls. So, I had to do a little bit here and there, but I tried not to overexert myself. I have a feeling that could be what led to this. I know appendicitis is totally random. Everybody keeps telling me, like, you're not unhealthy, like, you're fine. But, been working hard lately.
Actually, you're the second person I know that's had it in the last couple months. So
really,
I don't know. Yeah. And I don't know anybody else for like years and years. So And actually both young men like you.
My buddy, I was in high school, and a friend of mine who sat next to me in class, he felt ill one week and just looked horrible. He looked like a ghost. And I never understood. I was like, what happened to him? He's like, yeah, I had appendicitis. I was like, oh man, that sucks. I understand now.
Now you know, right?
Now I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So can you tell me a little bit about where you're from, how you were raised? What's the skinny all about that?
Yeah. So my name is Ryan Lee Moses. I was born in Sacramento, California in 1997. To Wendy Moses and Dana Moses. Those are two individuals that had a lot of problems with drugs and were in and out of prison. So inevitably, I ended up in foster care. I think it was the first time I went in was the age of 5. I would come out at 7. I would go back in at 8.5, and then go until I was about 12. I grew up in around 12 different homes, 8 different schools.
Wow. Whoa. Okay. 12 different homes in that short period of time, 8 different schools. So you were being moved from home to home or bounced from home to home? Were you 7 to 8 or?
The first tour in foster care was a couple homes. And there was those interim homes when they didn't have placements for you. Then my father would actually be the first man in Monterey County to ever receive his son back from Child Protective Services. Down here we call it DPSS, but it's Child Protective Services in the north.
Right.
And so he'd be the first man to ever do that.
Right. So he must have fought for you.
He did fight.
Really hard.
Yeah, he did fight really hard. But after that first tour, he would get me back for a year or two before he would relapse on drugs and inevitably go back to prison. Yeah, but he fought. He was never able to kick it. I think to this day, he still hasn't been able to kick it, the habit completely. So it's
right. And what kind of drugs?
Oh, hardcore
like
stuff.
Heroin?
I mean, the guy was a Hells Angels biker. So he ran with the best of them and did the hardest of the drugs. Yeah, heroin, meth, cocaine, crack. It was basically whatever you could land your hands on.
Right. And were you around that as a little kid? Like
I remember it.
Like the height?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. It's the little things you don't understand as a child. Like, why does it smell like a skunk in the house? That's the gateway, right? The weeds where it started. So he was sober. And then I had noticed, I was a smart kid. I think at 7, like I could totally understand if I saw my dad with like a beer or smoking. I was smart enough to understand and had grown up in enough of these NA meetings and AA meetings, hearing all these crazy stories. Like, I knew what drugs were at a very young age. And I knew to be upset with my father if he was relapsing, because, if he relapsed, he's messing it up for himself, but he's also sending me back to a place where, all I wanted to do was be with my father as a kid, but he had problems with drugs.
Right. So do you remember when you were first removed? Like, did you understand? Did you?
I was too young the first time, but my life flipped upside down that day. I'll never forget it.
What happened? What was it like?
Yeah, there was an altercation. We'd lived in in an apartment complex with. I was actually living with my mother at the time. She was very in and out of my life up to that point. So I was about 5 or 6, and he was like really at that point. I don't think sober, so definitely still off the wagon. Definitely, and it got into an altercation with our neighbors over a jar of mayonnaise. I just remember a jar of mayonnaise.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That was what the fight was about?
Yeah. But, when you're amped up, little things can turn into over exaggerations. There was a fight, but he was a trained guy. So my father was also in the military at a young age, but didn't do much service, just got really trained in combat. So he messed up like 3 dudes, like real bad. I just remember there being a lot of blood along the apartment complex. He had to go to the hospital. So they searched our house, found a bunch of stuff, and took my mom to jail. They didn't see me, though. So the kid just got left behind while everybody got taken away. Wow. I just got left behind. And then I went and knocked on my neighbor's door and said, like, hey, I don't know where my parents are. And then the neighbor had called CPS. And I remember that was the first time I think I had been to that building. A building that I would get to know like very well. throughout the rest of my life.
Because you went back and back and back and back
Yeah,
there.
spent
Right.
a lot of time there. That's where therapy was. That's where your court appointments are. That's where you would visit your family when you're in the foster system. So I think I slept on a bench that night because they didn't have anywhere to put me. And then I landed in this like real interim. It's like a foster home that you stay in for like 3 or 4 days at most. So it's really just like a processing center for foster kids.
Right. It's like shelter care,
Yeah.
just where they're supposed to they're supposed to be there less than 72 hours, but
I think I went to 2 of those.
yeah, wow, okay. Did you ever end up in a good home where you
Mhm.
felt cared for and safe?
I think one. And
Okay, I
sometimes,
want people to hear this. Okay, so sorry. Out of 12 homes,
yeah,
there was one.
I think one where I actually wanted to stay with that family. They were really a good family, and I think they had a bunch of foster children already that they had adopted, and they wanted to adopt me, and they wanted to like give me better chances. But my dad was in the process of fighting for me, and he was doing really well at that point. So there was no like talk of trying to terminate his parental rights. Some of the homes were kinship, like family friends that I would live with, and I'd say like I felt safe there. I didn't feel like I was being taken care of the best. Like I had food, I had like a roof over my head, but I was getting into a lot of trouble and didn't really have any like guidance from a parent. My dad was God knows where. I think he was in jail. He would go away to work sometimes up north and like leave me with like family members to kind of stay there because they had agreed to take care of me. So I lived with two family friends, and then I lived with a grandmother, and they,
Right. Do you have any siblings? Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have half siblings. So I have a half. They're all through my mother, and I don't know them very well. I've met them both maybe once in my life. One's much older than me, and another is a lot younger than me. I think about 14 right now. And I've had contact with them, but life goes on, and it's just really hard to try to forge connections with people when there's a lot of pain that exists in the root of those relationships. And we have families of our own, so it's like like we acknowledge each other, we follow each other, but we don't really engage with each other too often.
And how about your mom? Are you in touch with your mom?
I'm not in touch with my mom. My mom came back into my life right before the last time I went into foster care. But the last image I have of my mother is her ODing in the living room on pain pills and getting carried out on a stretcher and like getting her stomach pumped from EMTs. And so like my father was really trying to allow her back into my life, but she off the wagon a lot too. So he didn't want her in my life anymore. And I didn't frankly want to be in her life as well. So no, I haven't seen my mother since that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now you ended up being able to get a CASA, and so what was that like? What was that situation?
Yeah, so I've always been a very big advocate for myself.
I can tell, I can tell you're awesome. But anyway, go ahead.
Thank you. So the story with me and CASA, I was in a group home for the last year and a half or 2 years that I was in foster care. I was in a group home.
All right, tell me about the group home, because people don't know what group homes are like. They have this like idyllic view, and I doubt it was like that. Maybe it was.
I mean, they're
but
portrayed
let's
a
hear
lot
it.
as these church homes where kids go and have these great lives, right? Now, group homes are where you put, I would say, higher risk kids too, because like foster families want to take care of kids that will listen and like obey in their home. But I made a little more trouble than that, and so I was in a group home with a lot of other like 7 other boys, all different ages, all different backgrounds. We had one thing in common though, that we were taken away from our parents. We were put here, and we were all really pissed off about it. So we got into a lot of trouble, and a lot of stuff happened there that was messed up. I don't really want to get into it, but that was the first time I think I smoked weed. I remember how old I was. I think I was like 10 years old. No, 11 years old. So that was the first time I did that. That was the first time. I think there was a lot of fights in my life living with other kids. I mean, the staff at this house were just evil. Like they would let stuff develop to the point where it's like, you should have shut this down a long time ago, sent this person to their room, but they kind of like would let the boys control the house. And they were just kind of like, they didn't really want to do their job. They were really there to take us to doctor's appointments and make us dinner, right? They're not our parents. Like, they're pretty much working in the jungle. Like, we were crazy, and they let us be crazy. And so a lot of bullying, it was just messed up. It was a messed up place. And I wouldn't.
Yeah, and they were older boys, right, too? So they were
I was
probably
right in the
really
middle
rough
of
on...
the pack, so it wasn't too bad for me. And, you know, everybody liked me, too, because I was a nice kid. And I think I get along with people. And I've always been a natural kind of, I can talk to people and kind of relate to them. No matter where they come from or what they do, it's like we can find common ground. And I think that we could be friends. So I tend to be friends with a lot of people. But yeah, I definitely did get bullied, and there were a lot of bad influences. And I definitely bullied kids too. Like, I was not the best of the best either. Oh, but they were also stealing money. This group home got shut down like 2 months after I was there. We were really under taken care of. A story that I'll tell once I get into my CASA. But I used to wear shoestrings for belts because they wouldn't buy us belts. Or we would only get to eat, like, I remember, like, we only had a couple meals, like spaghetti. We ate it like 4 times a week for dinner because it was cheap, and they were skimming money off the top. So they were pulling up in new Jeeps. And we always wondered, like, why do they have new cars? Like, the owners of these group homes, it turned out that they were actually embezzling money.
Yeah, they were siphoning off the money meant to take care of all these boys and just buying themselves stuff and improving their material life.
Yeah.
It's gross.
Yeah, it was pretty disgusting. Looking back on it, you know, I used to think these people were really nice people and they were taking care of me, you know, but they were actually, you know, pretty greedy guys.
So you advocated to get a CASA? Did you hear about the CASA program, or did one just show up in your life?
I was at the group home. Pretty bored, but I was pretty good at entertaining myself. I was still young, play outside a lot, but I would always see kids coming and going, getting picked up by these random people. I was like, I know that's not your caseworker because we have the same caseworker. Who are these people? No, oh, that's my CASA. And they would come back home with gifts. They just always had stuff, right? Because, you know, CASAs love to spoil their mentees. And so
it's kind of true. And actually, you're not supposed to, but you
can't stop.
You can't help it.
Yeah. So I have a couple stories about that too. But that's how I found out about CASA, and how I got a CASA is, you know, it wasn't assigned to me because there was a shortage.
Yeah, of course.
And there's always a shortage, actually. In every county, I think here, only 30% of the youth are receiving a CASA, which is horrible.
I think it's even less than that, actually.
Really?
It's because there's 35,000 youth in LA County, and there's 1,200 CASAs. So, yeah, it's really, really not good.
Maybe I just added another 3 onto that 3% in hopes.
Oh, good for you. Okay, great.
I'm optimistic. Okay. So, yeah, I actually ended up I said, can I use the phone? We had to ask to use the phone. So I was like, my 11-year-old self, I was like, can I use the phone? I need to call somebody. And they're like, all right, who you can call? I was like, I want to call the CASA office. So I called the CASA office and I said, hey, my name is Brian Moses. I live at Central Coast Youth Foundation. Everyone around me has a CASA, and I just want to know when I'm supposed to get mine. I don't know if there's like a form I need to fill out or... And they started laughing. They actually started laughing. They're like, oh my goodness. Like, well, it's nice to meet you, Ryan Moses. And that was the beginning of the relationship I had with the Monterey office of CASA. And the people are amazing down there. We've done some work with them. They're really awesome people. So they actually had a lady in the office who was just like filling out the paperwork. She was finished with a previous mentee that she had through CASA. So she had worked with this girl for 2 years. And then the girl graduated, I think was being reunified with her mother. Her CASA tour was done. She was done with this girl. It was a good ending and no bad ending, but so she was about to retire. Her name's Kathy Horan Walker. And was in the office and the lady asked her, like, do you think you have enough in you for 1-1? This kid, he just called, and I don't think they'd ever heard it before, but they're like, this kid just called and asked when he's supposed to get his CASA. So I might have jumped myself up the waiting list. I don't know, but
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
They asked Kathy if she wanted to take on another one, and she said she would. And so me and Kathy would get lunch once a week, and we would go. So I live in Prunedale, and she lived in Monterey. So she would go, and the restaurant that we would go to was in Monterey. Prunedale was like 20 miles away. She would drive all the way to Prunedale, pick me up, take me all the way back to a restaurant that was 1 block away from her house. We would eat. And then she would take me all the way back to Prunedale and then then drive herself all the way home. So she would drive about 80 miles every time she wanted to take me out. Those 1 a week dinners turned into like 2 a week dinners. She started coming to like my wrestling matches in middle school, really supporting me, really being there for me, and really showing up as a CASA, and gave me the image of what a CASA is and the epitome of what they do. She embodied it, and she was there for me. She was the only one I actually had there for me at that time. Dad was in prison, mom, ghost. So it was Kathy, and we developed a relationship over a year. And by the end of that year, 1 a week had turned into like 4 times a week. She was driving hundreds of miles to just get me out of the hell that I was living in, because she would see me when she would pick me up. I wore my belt, my shoelace belt, and it almost made her cry. So she took me right to Big Five and bought me a belt and bought me some new pants. And when I was wrestling, and I had these old like hand-me-down shoes from my coach, she took me to Big Five, bought me wrestling shoes, made sure I had the equipment to kind of like blend in with the rest of the people, so I wasn't that foster kid that was, carrying his stuff around in a trash bag. She bought me a duffel bag so I didn't have to do that. So it wasn't a grocery bag,
Yeah.
And then
that sounds like a small thing, but it's not.
It's huge.
If you're used to having all your stuff in a black garbage bag, if somebody buys you a duffel bag, it almost makes you like a real person for a second.
Well, now you have a home for your belongings. Even if you're on the move, like you have a central location where this is where I put my stuff. This is mine. Even no matter where they move me, I have this. Yeah. So she had done all that for me, and she had went on to hear about my case that was being updated, and I was going to be moved again, this time to Modesto County, where it was like hundreds of miles away from where I had grown up all my life. Even though I was bounced around every city in Monterey County, I've always grown up in Monterey County. They were going to move me like a long ways away. And she just like had enough of seeing life deal me, in lack of a better word, shitty cards. She didn't want to see that anymore. And she decided that she was going to become my long-term foster parent until I graduated high school. She was going to help me get on to the next stage of my life. So and this is just because if you adopt, you terminate parental rights, which she didn't want to do. But she also knew that if I was in foster care a day past my 16th birthday, that I would receive funds in higher education for being a foster youth. Strategically, she took me in as a foster youth and provided a long-term foster care, but that was never the circumstances from the get-go. The day I arrived at her house, said, "We're your family now. This is your room. Like, this is, she said, you don't have to call me mom. You don't have to call my dad's name that I called him when I first showed up to his house was Coach, because this man has coached basketball and people all his life. He's an amazing person that imparts all his knowledge in the game of sports and in the game of life, in the church. And so we were like, man, you might feel uncomfortable calling us mom and dad. So you can call me Catherine, because that's what you called me. And you can call him Coach. And so that's what I called him. Later on in my years, actually a couple of years ago, I started calling him mom and dad because it's what it is.
Just feels right. Yeah.
That's my family. That's my family. So yeah, after that was my last, I didn't know that would be my last year at Central Coast Youth Foundation, the group home. And then meeting Kathy was where I found a forever family in a sense. And it sounds cheesy, but they really are. They really are my family. So it's my mom, my dad, and then my two brothers, Chris. So they have two biological sons, two brothers, Chris and Pat.
Mm-hmm. And then you continue to be an advocate and continue to be an advocate for foster youth. So tell me about the Epicenter and the Teddy Bear Drive and all the other stuff that you've done. Not what you're doing now, but what you did when you were a kid, really.
I just looked at my calendar, and that was 10 years ago.
Wow. So you're 14 because you're 24 now.
14 going on 15. It started with the Teddy Bear Drive, where as a foster youth who experienced the court system as a foster youth in a foster home or a group home, I know what it's like to spend a Christmas and not get presents. It sucks.
Sucks, yeah.
And so I was going to my school where I saw an opportunity that, I have been fortunate enough to go to a private school for high school called Palma High School, and everyone around me was a little more wealthy than the average person. And so I saw an opportunity. I said, these people, I know that when they were kids, they probably had every stuffed animal or teddy bear, toy that they could ever dream of. And I know that it's sitting in the closet right now, collecting dust. So we put together a drive. I started a club with a friend of mine he started it and I helped him get it going, and we did a drive through. It's called the Know That You Matter Club. And we collected over 800 teddy bears the first year it was in the name of CASA, and we did it through CASA, and it was for the courts to give out every time a kid showed up to their court appointment around the season. They would receive a gift from the court, so that even if they didn't get anything that year, maybe even if this was that most scariest point in their journey, it was like they got something there that maybe they hold on to, or maybe they cherish, or maybe it's just, they don't receive things a lot. So we gave that to them, and we had 800 bears that year. That we would go on the next year to expand it. And we do it at my school. And then my brother, Patrick, was a teacher in a school about an hour away. And we had started to really do outreach and talk about, how can we get this thing really going? And so got him involved, got a former 49ers player involved. He wrote a big check that we were able to donate to CASA. And then we were able, between both schools, to raise 3,000 bears. And I let his third grade class, the reason his third grade class showed up, and they brought thousands of bears. I think their parents just wanted to get rid of them. But I told them they could all take turns shaving my head. I had long hair. Wow. And I was like, you guys can take these clippers and everybody can come up and shave off a piece of Mr. Walker's brother's hair. And they loved it. They ate it up. They were like, just little kids going crazy. So yeah, they really showed up for us, and their parents showed up for us in that community. St. Catherine's up in Morgan Hill really showed up for us, as well as the Palma High School community. And we tripled our thing there and provided, I think it spilled over in other years, that amount of bears in that county. So they had it for 2 more years, they had presents to give out. So,
there's something about a teddy bear that's really great too. We have them in the CASA court here in Los Angeles. I don't know who provides them, but every kid gets a bear. And no matter how old the kid is, they want a bear. It's like you just want to hold on to it. It's like soft and cuddly. It's comforting. I don't know what happens with kids that are 18 or 19. I haven't seen that. But I even have a teddy bear in my house that every now and then I just grab and hold on to.
I have many around me right now.
Yeah, it's like it's not just a kid thing. It's an adult thing. All right, so you started that. It becomes a huge success. And then you ended up in college for a bit, but
I think the Epicenter
was a little rough for you.
The Epicenter came first. I was scouted by an organization to open up a resource center for foster youth in Monterey County. And so I spent my junior year of high school building a nonprofit resource center for transitional age system-involved youth in Monterey County to go to and receive resources to get to the next level, or just, receive assistance wherever they're at. We're talking about homeless, drugs, college, food stamps, insurance, doctors, like everything that they needed, they could get it there. And we started that in 2017, and the doors are still open today.
Wow, so you helped to actually form and structure that program in order to have a place for kids who were transitioning to figure out what are the next moves and what kind of support can I
Myself
get?
and 6 other foster youth. I was part of the original 3 founders that would set up the program to bring in 6 other foster youth to form a team that would go on to start this in less than a year. So it took us about 9 months to get this from ground, like from thought idea, like whiteboard names, to a building that has employees and serves hundreds of foster youth every year.
Right, and still serving them, right?
Yeah, still.
Yep, and I think if I'll put this in the show notes, but it's epicenter.org, right? I'm pretty sure.
So.
Yeah, and it's through the Monterey County Child Welfare Services and Voices.
Yeah, so we did everything from grant writing to, scouting real estate to developing programs that were going to engage the community resources with the youth. We did everything.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Okay, so you ended up in college after that, right?
I did end up in college. I was fortunate enough to, get my grades together my senior year, and I was able to get into Santa Clara University, where I would go on to discover, 1, how hard college was, but 2, and most importantly of all, how hard college is for foster youth and how much we bring to that challenge already. We have so much that we already need to deal with, that college is already a big enough challenge for someone that hasn't experienced care. And I think that I really learned at Santa Clara that, I needed to deal with some stuff and kind of figure some stuff out for myself before I really took a shot at this. So I would fall into drug addiction at Santa Clara almost immediately after getting there. I would find out how hard it was for me to go to class and actually kind of try. I was diagnosed with learning disabilities when I got to Santa Clara, diagnosed with ADHD, which answered a lot of questions from my childhood. So, I faced a lot of challenges. Actually ended up getting kicked out of Santa Clara after 2 years of F's on my transcripts. They finally had enough and were like, yeah, you got to go. So I would fall into a pretty dark place for the next year, heavily battling drug addiction, cocaine, opiates, drinking, psychedelics, smoking. We would do it all.
And you almost OD'd, right?
Yeah.
Right?
I was pretty close. About 2-3 times I would end up in the hospital. No, it would be twice. I'd end up in the hospital, IVs in my arm, spend a day there because I couldn't take in water. I would just overload my stomach lining to the point of almost poisoning myself with alcohol, or just like going through withdrawals of trying to quit drugs really put it on me too. So I would have some bouts in the hospital, and then I would finally have a third bout in the hospital that my mother, Catherine, would witness, which is what turned everything around. I think my mom looking at me, this is almost bringing tears to my eyes, in a hospital bed, strapped down for a 5150. They were getting ready to take me to a mental hospital because I had been suicidal a couple nights before and was really just whacked out on drugs. That I was going through a real bad one that week. So my brothers would actually come up to get me. I was living in San Jose. I was living by myself with my friends at that time. I was really scaring the heck out of them. So they were calling my family. So my brothers were actually in town, and they went up and drove up and got me. I came home and was just acting bizarre. Real, like noticeable behavior, like this person's on drugs. Like you can tell. I was a different person, and I was like scaring the heck out of my family. And so my family wanted to take me to the hospital. My mom like sat me down and asked me, she says, I really want you to go to the hospital, please. I said, okay. I went to the hospital, started cursing at doctors, started like, it's just bad. So they 5150'd me after they heard everything that I had been through. And I saw my mom. I looked outside when they were taking me to the ambulance, and I saw my mom crying. And you don't really see my mom cry a lot. She's a real tough woman. So that kind of cracked me like to my core. And I spent a week in a box styrofoam room, just kind of thinking about that. And I had nothing else. I didn't have my phone. I didn't have just four walls. It drove me insane. But I sat with the fact that the woman who had given me so much and had given me everything, I had driven her to tears. And, I know I didn't make her cry, but my actions had made her hurt so bad that it brought tears to her eyes. And I think that really, truly kind of broke me. But after that was the beautiful thing. She picked me up from the hospital and she said, you have one life and you have one choice, and you're the only person that is going to be able to turn this around and kind of get this on track. And she's like, I can't do it for you. You're the only one. And so I knew I had to take it a day at a time. So I got this tattoo on my wrist. It says 86400.
Yes.
It's the amount of seconds that you have in a day. And so that's what got me through it, is after her kind of telling me that it was a long journey ahead, getting clean, it would be one of the hardest things I've ever done. So what helped me kind of get through it was to take it one day at a time, and just take it one day at a time, be real easy on myself if I messed up, be forgiving, but taking it a day at a time. I was able to turn it around. Started at De Anza College right after a year of kind of all of that stuff happening. Yeah, I had to start all the way over. And this was at a point where I was watching the people that I had started college with graduate. And that's where I was starting.
Yeah, so you felt behind.
I felt
right?
about 3 years behind. 3 years behind. So my first semester at De Anza was in the spring of 2020. And that's where all my friends were walking. The people I started with, the friends I made when I came into orientation, my pledge brothers from my fraternity freshman year. Yeah, they were all walking. And I had this bout with myself. I said, do I really need to do this? Should I just go pick up a trade and try to, start a business? I've come so far. I found out about that statistic around that time where only 3% of foster youth are going to graduate, right? And I hung that up on my wall. And I had a 3% that stood in my desk for so long. I don't really need it anymore. But it motivated me for such a long time. When I was behind, I said, there's so many of us that don't even get the chance to have this opportunity to educate themselves. So I'm like, if I quit, I'm quitting on the 97. And I was like, I cannot do that. Because if I quit, I am the 97. But then I don't have a chance where I can fight for them. And I can, we don't have to be 3%. We can be 4, 5, 6, 10, 25, on par with the regular population, 50. That's all I want. It's all I wanted for the longest time. And so that motivated me, and that really drove me to stick in school and go through 6 different majors and go through transferring the transfer process all over again, applying to universities all over again. So I applied to University of Columbia because I came out of De Anza. I never passed a class at Santa Clara, but then I never didn't get a B+ or an A at De Anza once I really got my head on straight. And I started to focus. So I had a good opportunity to kind of set the record straight after coming out of De Anza. And I said, I'm back where I started. What am I going to do this time? Where am I going to go? And LMU in LA has always called my name. I tried to get in here right out of college. And I said, well, I'm going to go for it. So I applied to LMU for communications, which I had graduated from De Anza with a AA in communications, and applied to LMU for communications, and I got denied again. And I said, man, again? I cannot do this. I'd gotten denied from the rest of the schools that I applied to as well. So I said, man, I'm a sitting duck. So I reapplied to a different major the same year. And I said, well, let me see if I can sneak in over here because this has a lower GPA requirement. Okay. I had some background in sociology as well. So I applied for sociology, and they accepted me. And the catch was that I would have to start all over, because I didn't have that many credits in sociology. All my credits had been towards a communications degree. I would have finished in a year if I had gotten into communications at LMU. a year turned into what's now going to be 3.
Right.
But I'm stretching this last one. But I could finish next semester if I was to take a full load and overload with one more unit. But I like LMU. I want to stick around and I want to stay. And I said, I'm
Yeah.
there. I'm almost there. So
Yeah, and you're living on campus and you met
I
great
did.
people, right? And
Met amazing folks.
yeah, and then you launched another program in your dorm room. So tell me about that. And you're wearing the hat right now
Yes.
too.
Yes, this is a new one we got. DoGud Clothing. It's the streetwear brand that gives back and supports foster youth. And the way that we do that is we partner with the organizations that had a direct impact on me coming up in the foster system. And so we have a mission here. We give back 10% of all of our sales to these efforts. And our first partnership, sure enough, was CASA. So near and dear to my heart, I was able to reach out. And for Foster Care Awareness Month, we went on a campaign with CASA. We were able to bring in around $8,000.
$8,000. A bunch of kids in college who designed and manufactured this cool clothing, yes, cool streetwear, and you gave $8,000 to CASA.
Yeah.
Wow.
But not only that, we were able to get our message, and why we did this was to raise awareness. The money's great. But we actually were able to have some people help us out who have large Instagram followings. Our friend Lisa, she's a foster care influencer who is on Instagram and just spreads a lot of awareness to her 30,000 followers about the foster care system and about what they do. And so she was able to partner with us, and we got our mission out to over 30,000 people. We had over 70 people contribute to this fundraiser in monetary ways that was able to raise that 8,000. And that was friends and family and random people that we don't even know. And they showed up. And so this whole month was just a real big validation that our community is here for us, and our community supports us, and they support what we're doing. And it just validated all the hard work that we've done, my life as a foster youth and how I'm trying to give back. It just made all of it worth it, because it showed we can do really amazing things working together on this project. So
yeah, you're really having impact. Yeah, for sure. So can you explain to me, because I've seen a lot of the posts. I love the colors, by the way. They're when you say streetwear, I always think of something that's kind of dark, whatever. But no, you've got lots of pastels and really cool combination of colors. But also the posts that I see, everybody's wearing a mask. So what is that about? It's like a cloth mask that actually suits the outfit that they're posing in.
Yeah, so those are our ski masks. When we were in development of the brand, we started to talk, and we started to say, what's something we can do different? How can we stick out? And I said, who are we representing? We're representing a population that often goes unnoticed and unrecognized. And so why we wear the mask is because we don't want to be recognized and noticed. If I get famous for this,
right,
and I accumulate so much, influence, it's not going to be my face up there. It'll be a ski mask, and it'll be the face of foster youth, because we're doing this for them. I do make money off DoGud. It is a business. It's our livelihood, but a big focus of it is to spread a mission and to spread and create a community that, is passionate about the success of foster youth. So we cultivate that in our garment, in our following, and our Instagram, and everything. And the mask is just what brings it all together, and how when you see something that's DoGud.
Yeah, it's very, very distinctive. Yeah. It's super clear. So I want to ask you another thing that I ask all my guests, and that is, what is the one thing that no one would ever know about you unless you told them?
I think what might come as a surprise to a lot of people in my life that know me now, I used to be scared of everything. I think I used to be scared of the world, of people letting me down, to the point where I wouldn't let anything in. I wouldn't let anything good become even in development to happen to me, because I was so scared that I didn't want to get my hopes up. I didn't want to, but it was to the point where I was scared to talk to people. And that will come very surprising to a lot of people, but I had no self-confidence in my ability. And that was me until like very, like at the age of like 14. I was a very timid person until I was empowered and someone showed me they loved me and someone showed me they cared, that I can mess up and they would still be there. My mom and my dad, Kathy Aran Walker, showed me that she's going to still love me even if I'm a drug addict sitting in a mental hospital and she has to pick me up. And those kind of things, once they were shown to me, unlocked abilities that I had lying dormant. So much power in what I had and what I can do that I know it's in so many other foster children. And so that thing that I have that nobody knows about me is actually something that drives me to help other people unlock in a way. That makes sense?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, really. Thank you for sharing that with me. I think it's that particular observation is going to be really important for other foster youth who hear this podcast.
Yeah.
That you're not always going to be the scared, timid kid. You can be the person, the man, the woman that reaches out and helps other people too, as well as yourself.
Yeah, and I think, it's something we're really good at, and I don't want to encourage, but I do want to encourage. It's just, people might not always say they're proud of you, but you gotta be proud of yourself. You gotta be your number one fan and not your number one critic, because I know as a foster child, and I know that it's really easy to beat yourself up and to self-sabotage, but be proud of yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking with me, Ryan. This is really great.
Thank you for giving me a chance to kind of speak my mind. I've never done a podcast before, but I'd like to do more of them.
Well, you should.
Yeah.
You're good at it.
Thank you for having me, Jayne.
Thank you, Ryan, for sharing your story with us. It's great to see you giving back by providing CASA with a percentage of the proceeds from your streetwear company, DoGud Clothing, so that more youth can get the support they need. And next week's guest is a special guest because she was Ryan's CASA, Kathy Haran Walker. So join us next week for the parallel story. Thank you, and be well. If you see something, say something. If you suspect a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org, and in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out the National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's tons of other information online as well, so you can just hunt around. We also want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful original music. You can find her music on Spotify or Instagram at Christina Aposto. And also thank you to Yukon Har for his engineering. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear and you find it as valuable as we do, please rate us and hit subscribe. You can also make a donation at BonusBabies.org. See you next time.